What's up, everybody? James Hancock here, back to review the Season 3 premiere of True Detective on HBO. A premiere which included the first 2 episodes, but there are 6 more episodes to go. But it's absolutely incredible to think that it was almost 5 years ago to the day that we were first exposed to the first season of True Detective. A season that I think ranks among the finest shows of the last decade. I can think of no genre of storytelling more tired and used up than the police procedural. Yet somehow writer Nic Pizzolatto and director Cary Fukunaga, the writing and directing team responsible for each episode of Season 1, they managed to make every episode feel like the most important pop culture event of that year. And also I should point out, it's very rare to have a situation where one writer and one director do an entire season of television together. It creates a much more distinctive, idiosyncratic flavor to the overall story, much like Twin Peaks: The Return with David Lynch. At any rate, in terms of style and atmosphere, Season 1 was extraordinarily cinematic, with the team of Pizzolatto and Fukunaga appearing to do everything in their power to infuse the narrative with mystery, danger, and eroticism. I was spellbound. But then in 2015, we had Season 2, where writer Nic Pizzolatto was still on board, but with a revolving door of different directors handling those duties on each episode. And personally, I think Pizzolatto went back to the well way too quickly and probably should have taken at least another year to write Season 2. But more importantly, the loss of Fukunaga could be felt in every shot. Gone was the superb visual storytelling, and in its place was a show that I think everybody would simply prefer to forget. This is pure speculation on my part, but I suspect Pizzolatto was a little tired of hearing of how amazing Fukunaga's work was on the show and wanted to exercise more control over the final product. In Season 3, Pizzolatto has directed 2 episodes, and once again he has chosen to work with other directors. Jeremy Saulnier, who directed The Green Room, directed both of tonight's episodes, and it's rumored that he left the show due to creative differences with Nic Pizzolatto. The official story was a scheduling conflict, but then Daniel Sachin was brought in to handle the directing duties on 4 of the other episodes. What's interesting to me is that Deadwood creator David Milch was brought in to help prepare the show, and he also co-wrote one of the episodes, and I'm a massive fan of his style of storytelling. But the big question leading into tonight over the last few weeks has been whether or not this show can reclaim its mantle as the best thing on television. They made an excellent choice of going with Mahershala Ali as the lead, Detective Wayne Hayes. While in person Ali seems like this incredibly warm, friendly person, on screen I've always found him to have this fascinating mix of mystery and intensity, and over the last few years he's certainly been doing the best work of his career. And from what we've seen so far, it looks like he's determined to give this show everything he's got. But the premise is a little more complex this time around, with a crime story that takes place in 3 different time periods, 1980, 1990, and 2015. And Hayes is a detective who was involved in the case of 2 missing children in 1980, Will and Julie Purcell. But in 1990, the case has been reopened due to some wrongful convictions as well as new information. But in 2015, we find Hayes being interviewed for a show talking about the famous case. But because Hayes' memory has been failing him, it makes him a little bit of an unreliable narrator. As he discusses the case and his wife's book on the subject, some memories start coming back, so his character kind of drifts in and out of the 3 different time periods, leading to these really interesting transitions. And so far it's been a dark and foreboding tale, and I have to admit it does have me hooked. However, whether or not it can live up to my insanely high expectations remains to be seen. I found the first 2 episodes to be very watchable, perhaps a little on the slow side if I'm being totally honest. But it was more like a slow burn, and I'm hoping it's building to this huge crescendo. But I think Season 3 is light years better than Season 2. Whether or not it'll measure up to Season 1, I will have to determine after watching a few more episodes. But let's talk a little bit about some of the ingredients that impressed me the most so far. First of all, Detective Wayne Hayes is just an incredibly cool character. He did 2 tours of duty in Vietnam where he specialized in long-range reconnaissance, basically a tracker who would disappear into the jungle by himself for days at a time or sometimes weeks and will come back with information and perhaps a few scalps. Now he puts those skills to use in the woods of Arkansas, and he works with a partner by the name of Roland West, played superbly by Stephen Dorff. I usually dislike Stephen Dorff, but so far I have to admit he's been incredible this season. He's going to force me to reassess my opinion of his work. But I also like how they've really fleshed out this rural, rather poor community in Arkansas. Will and Julie come from a blue-collar family where their parents spend most of their time fighting and arguing, and as a result, they like to explore. One day they go out on their bicycles and never come home, but we see a few of the crucial witnesses that they bump into right before they disappear. And like the first season of the show, the plot goes into some really dark territory with the introduction of certain dolls, some that mark the path to Will's dead body that Hayes eventually finds. And that was easily the most chilling scene of the show so far this season. I actually did get some goosebumps on my neck while seeing it. But we also learned that one of these dolls was given to Julie by two people dressed as ghosts on Halloween a week before their disappearance. And one of the very few light scenes from either of these episodes, we see Hayes geeking out about Star Wars, making lightsaber sounds with the kid who gives him some crucial information on that front. We also hear some gossip from their grandmother who believes that their father might not actually be their biological father. Whether or not that turns out to be relevant to the investigation, we shall have to wait and see. The other interesting twist is the fact that Julie's fingerprints have been found in 1990 due to a robbery at a drugstore, but they're not sure whether or not her prints were there because she was a customer or whether or not she was part of the crime. But consequently, many of their conclusions in 1980 have now been thrown into doubt. The big question is just how much sloppy or unethical or just outright illegal behavior was engaged in back in 1980. We've already seen how sloppiness has led to a total community panic with tons of false leads. That absolutely makes me doubt whether or not the note about Julie's disappearance is even authentic. But in a crucial scene, we've already witnessed Hayes and West willing to beat a man senseless and make all kinds of horrible threats because the man actually has been guilty of child molestation in the past. While emotionally, they absolutely seem justified because they're desperately trying to find this little girl, Julie, clearly Hayes is conflicted on a lot of fronts. Because looking back, on the bright side, the investigation brought him together with his wife Amelia, who he loved dearly. They raised a family together. But I want to know what secrets Hayes and West might be sharing. The teaser for the rest of the season suggests that they did something together that neither one of them is particularly proud of. We also know that Hayes resigned in 1990, but it remains to be seen if that was over disgust from behavior that he witnessed, or perhaps he encountered the true horror of whatever crime they're investigating. What I'm curious about the most is who drilled the hole in the wall in the little kid's room and why. I think the uncle who temporarily lived in there was probably too busy looking at his old Playboys to be acting like a peeping Tom on the rest of the family. But perhaps Julie and Will's mother was involved in some strange stuff, and the kids enjoyed kind of keeping tabs on it. Once again, that's pure speculation. It's really too early for me to offer any theories of any kind, but I'm sure Reddit and Twitter, etc., are all exploding with speculation at this point. What I can say with confidence is that this is a very solid show and well worth a look, even if you're still feeling burned from the disappointing season 2. But it's nearly midnight here on the East Coast, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap this video up. I wish I had more fuel to add to the speculation fire, but at this point I just don't have anything juicy that I feel like is worth sharing. But if you enjoyed this review, please consider subscribing to my channel. I would really appreciate it. If you want to talk more about this show or True Detective Season 1 or 2, you can always find me on Twitter at Colbrax, and there's a link to that on the video notes below. But I can't thank you enough for watching my video. I really appreciate it. Hope everybody's enjoying the show, but more importantly, as always, onwards and upwards.